What if everything you've been taught about good and evil is a lie? What if morality isn't about universal truths, but about power and control? What if the values we hold dear, like humility, kindness, and equality, aren't virtues at all but tools used by the weak to overthrow the strong? These are the radical questions posed by Friedrich Nietzsche, one of history's most controversial philosophers, and today we're diving into his explosive idea, master-slave morality. Nietzsche was a 19th century German philosopher who challenged the foundations of traditional morality. He believed that what we call good and evil aren't absolute truths, but human inventions shaped by power struggles. In his book On the Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche introduced the concept of master-slave morality. According to him, there are two types of morality, one created by the strong, noble, and powerful, what he called master morality, and another created by the weak, oppressed, and resentful, what he called slave morality. These two moral systems, Nietzsche argued, are in constant conflict, shaping not just our values, but our entire understanding of right and wrong. So why does this matter? Because Nietzsche's critique of ethics forces us to question the very foundation of our moral beliefs. It asks us to consider, are we living by our own values, or are we simply following the morality of others? Are we embracing strength and creativity, or are we trapped in a system that glorifies weakness and resentment? In this video, we'll explore the origins of master-slave morality, Nietzsche's critique of traditional ethics, and how these ideas still resonate in our modern world. By the end, you'll have a deeper understanding of Nietzsche's philosophy and perhaps a new perspective on your own values. To understand Nietzsche's critique of morality, we first need to look at how morality has evolved over time. For centuries, humans have tried to define what's good and evil. In ancient societies, morality was often tied to religion or tradition. For example, in ancient Greece, virtues like courage and honor were celebrated, while cowardice and dishonor were condemned. Similarly, in medieval Europe, morality was heavily influenced by Christianity, with concepts like sin, salvation, and divine judgment shaping people's behavior. But Nietzsche argued that these moral systems weren't universal truths. They were human inventions shaped by the needs and power dynamics of their time. Nietzsche challenged the idea that morality is universal or eternal. Instead, he believed that morality is a product of human history and psychology. In his view, moral values aren't handed down by gods or discovered through reason. They're created by people to serve specific purposes. For Nietzsche, morality is a tool used by different groups to assert their power and control. The strong create values that celebrate their strength, while the weak create values that undermine the strong. This is the foundation of Nietzsche's critique of traditional ethics, a critique that leads us to his concept of master-slave morality. So, what exactly are master morality and slave morality? Let's start with master morality. This is the morality of the strong, noble, and powerful. In master morality, values like strength, pride, and excellence are celebrated. The good is whatever affirms life, power, and creativity, while the bad is whatever is weak, timid, or mediocre. Think of ancient warriors or aristocrats. They valued courage, ambition, and self-mastery. They didn't see themselves as good because they followed rules. They were good because they were strong and exceptional. Now, let's contrast this with slave morality. This is the morality of the weak, oppressed, and resentful. In slave morality, values like humility, meekness, and equality are celebrated. The good is whatever protects the weak and restrains the strong, while the evil is whatever is powerful, proud, or dominant. Slave morality emerged as a reaction to oppression. The weak couldn't defeat the strong physically, so they fought back morally. They called the strong evil and turned their own weakness into virtue. Nietzsche saw this as a profound shift in human history. Slave morality, he argued, didn't just challenge master morality, it inverted it. What was once celebrated as strength became condemned as arrogance. What was once dismissed as weakness became praised as virtue. This inversion, Nietzsche believed, has shaped our modern moral values, values that he saw as life-denying and oppressive. Master morality is the ethics of the strong, noble, and powerful. It's a value system created by those who see themselves as exceptional, those who don't need to follow rules because they make their own. In master morality, the good is whatever affirms life, power, and creativity. Strength, pride, and excellence are celebrated, while weakness, timidity, and mediocrity are dismissed as bad. For example, in master morality, a warrior's courage is seen as good, while a slave's obedience is seen as bad. A leader's ambition is celebrated, while a follower's humility is dismissed. Master morality isn't about following external rules or seeking approval, it's about self-affirmation. It's about saying, I am strong, I am exceptional, and I create my own values. This is why Nietzsche admired master morality. He saw it as life-affirming and authentic. It's a morality that celebrates individuality, creativity, and the will to power. But Nietzsche also recognized its limitations, and we'll explore those later in this section. To understand master morality better, let's look at some historical examples. One of the clearest examples comes from ancient Greece. The Greek aristocracy valued traits like courage, honor, and excellence. They saw themselves as superior to the common people, and their morality reflected this. For them, being good meant being strong, brave, and ambitious. Think of figures like Achilles, the legendary warrior who valued glory above all else. His strength and pride were celebrated, not condemned. Another example comes from the Roman Empire. The Roman elite valued discipline, power, and dominance. They built an empire through conquest and saw themselves as the rightful rulers of the world. Their morality was about asserting their strength and maintaining their superiority. Even in more recent history, we can see traces of master morality. Think of Renaissance figures like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo. They were celebrated for their creativity, ambition, and individuality. They didn't follow the rules, they broke them and created something new. These examples show how master morality has shaped human history. It's a morality of the exceptional, the powerful, and the creative. But as Nietzsche pointed out, it's not without its flaws. While Nietzsche admired master morality for its life-affirming qualities, he also recognized its limitations. One of the biggest problems with master morality is that it can lead to arrogance and cruelty. When the strong see themselves as superior, they may exploit or oppress the weak. Think of ancient conquerors who built empires on the backs of slaves. Their strength and ambition were celebrated, but at what cost? Another problem is that master morality can be fragile. When the strong are challenged or defeated, their values can collapse. Think of the fall of the Roman Empire. The once proud aristocracy was overrun by barbarians, and their morality was replaced by something entirely different. Finally, Nietzsche argued that master morality is incomplete. It celebrates strength and creativity, but it doesn't address the deeper questions of human existence. What happens when the strong face suffering, doubt, or despair? Master morality doesn't have an answer. This is why Nietzsche believed that master morality, while admirable, isn't enough. It needs to be balanced with something deeper, something that addresses the complexities of human life. And this brings us to slave morality, which we'll explore in the next section. Slave morality is the ethics of the weak, oppressed, and resentful. Unlike master morality, which celebrates strength and power, slave morality values humility, meekness, and equality. In slave morality, the good is whatever protects the weak and restrains the strong, while the evil is whatever is powerful, proud, or dominant. For example, in slave morality, a slave's obedience is seen as good, while a warrior's courage is seen as evil. A leader's ambition is condemned as arrogance, while a follower's humility is praised as virtue. Slave morality is a morality of reaction. It emerges as a response to oppression. The weak can't defeat the strong physically, so they fight back morally. They call the strong evil and turn their own weakness into virtue. This inversion of values is what Nietzsche found so fascinating and troubling. Slave morality doesn't just challenge master morality, it flips it on its head. What was once celebrated as strength becomes condemned as arrogance. What was once dismissed as weakness becomes praised as virtue. And this inversion, Nietzsche argued, has shaped our modern moral values. To understand slave morality better, let's look at some historical examples. One of the clearest examples comes from early Christianity. Christianity emerged as a religion of the oppressed, slaves, peasants, and outcasts. Its values reflected this. Humility, meekness, and forgiveness were celebrated, while pride, ambition, and power were condemned. Think of figures like Jesus, who taught that the meek shall inherit the earth. This was a direct challenge to the Roman aristocracy, who valued strength and dominance. Another example comes from the French Revolution. The revolutionaries, many of whom were from the lower classes, overthrew the aristocracy and declared that all men are equal. Their values, liberty, equality, fraternity, were a direct rejection of the old aristocratic morality. The strong were no longer seen as superior. They were seen as oppressors. Even in modern times, we can see traces of slave morality. Think of social movements that fight for the rights of the marginalized. These movements often use moral language to challenge power structures and demand equality. These examples show how slave morality has shaped human history. It's a morality of the oppressed, the weak, and the resentful. But as Nietzsche pointed out, it's not without its problems. While Nietzsche recognized the power of slave morality, he also saw it as deeply problematic. One of the biggest issues with slave morality is that it's rooted in resentment. The weak don't create their values out of strength or creativity, they create them out of hatred for the strong. This resentment, Nietzsche argued, is toxic. It leads to a morality that denies life, creativity, and individuality. Another problem is that slave morality can be oppressive in its own way. By condemning strength and ambition, it stifles human potential. Think of societies that punish success or discourage innovation. These are the consequences of slave morality taken to the extreme. Finally, Nietzsche argued that slave morality is dishonest. It pretends to be about justice and equality, but at its core, it's about power. The weak use morality as a weapon to overthrow the strong and take their place. But once they're in power, they often become just as oppressive as the people they replaced. This is why Nietzsche believed that slave morality, while powerful, is ultimately life-denying. It doesn't celebrate human potential, it suppresses it. And this brings us to Nietzsche's broader critique of traditional ethics, which we'll explore in the next section. Resentment is a powerful emotion, one that Nietzsche saw as the driving force behind slave morality. But what exactly is resentment? At its core, resentment is a feeling of bitterness or anger towards someone you perceive as having wronged you. It's not just anger, though. Resentment is a deep, lingering emotion that grows over time. It's the feeling of being powerless. To change your situation, so you turn that frustration inward, letting it fester and grow. For Nietzsche, resentment is more than just an emotion. It's a psychological force. It's the feeling of being oppressed, ignored, or undervalued, and it shapes how we see the world. When resentment takes hold, it doesn't just affect how we feel. It affects how we think, how we act, and even how we define right and wrong. And this is where resentment becomes central to slave morality. So, how does resentment shape slave morality? Nietzsche argued that slave morality is born out of resentment. The weak, unable to defeat the strong physically, fight back morally. They take their feelings of powerlessness and turn them into a new system of values, one that condemns the strong and glorifies the weak. For example, the strong celebrate traits like pride and ambition, but the weak, feeling resentful toward the strong, invert these values. They call pride arrogance and ambition greed. They take the traits they lack, like humility and meekness, and turn them into virtues. This inversion is the essence of slave morality. It's not about creating new values, it's about redefining existing ones to suit the needs of the weak. But here's the problem. Resentment doesn't just create new values, it poisons them. Slave morality isn't about celebrating life or creativity. It's about denying the values of the strong. It's a morality of no, not yes. And this, Nietzsche argued, makes it life-denying rather than life-affirming. To understand how resentment works in practice, let's look at some examples. One of the clearest examples comes from early Christianity. Christianity emerged as a religion of the oppressed, slaves, peasants, and outcasts. These groups, unable to challenge the Roman Empire physically, fought back morally. They took the values of the Roman aristocracy, strength, pride, and power, and inverted them. They called pride sin and power corruption. They celebrated humility, meekness, and forgiveness, values that directly oppose the Roman ideal of strength. Another example comes from modern social movements. Think of movements that fight for the rights of the marginalized. These movements often use moral language to challenge power structures and demand equality. But beneath the surface, there's often an undercurrent of resentment, a feeling of being wronged by those in power. This resentment fuels the movement, giving it energy and direction. Even in everyday life, we can see resentment at work. Think of someone who's constantly criticizing others for being selfish or arrogant. Deep down, they might be struggling with their own feelings of inadequacy. Their criticism isn't just about the other person, it's a way of coping with their own resentment. These examples show how resentment shapes slave morality. It's a powerful force, one that can inspire change, but also one that can poison our values and our relationships. And this is why Nietzsche saw resentment as both fascinating and dangerous. Nietzsche's critique of traditional ethics begins with a fundamental question: is morality universal? For centuries, philosophers and religious leaders have claimed that there are universal moral truths, values that apply to everyone, everywhere, at all times. But Nietzsche rejected this idea. He argued that morality isn't universal, it's human. It's not handed down by gods or discovered through reason. It's created by people to serve specific purposes. For Nietzsche, traditional morality, whether it's based on religion, philosophy, or social norms, isn't about truth or justice. It's about control. It's a way for certain groups to impose their values on others. Think of the Ten Commandments or Kant's categorical imperative. These moral systems claim to be universal, but Nietzsche saw them as tools of power. They suppress individuality, creativity, and the will to power, the very things that make us human. This is why Nietzsche called for a revaluation of all values. He believed that we need to question the moral systems we take for granted and ask, who benefits from these values? Who do they serve? And most importantly, do they help us live fuller, more authentic lives? One of Nietzsche's most famous ideas is the death of God. But what does this mean? Nietzsche wasn't talking about the literal death of a deity. He was talking about the collapse of traditional moral and religious frameworks. In the modern world, science, reason, and secularism have undermined the authority of religion. People no longer believe in God as the source of moral truth, But Nietzsche saw this as both a crisis and an opportunity. On one hand, the death of war. God leaves a moral vacuum. Without a divine authority to tell us what's right and wrong, we're left adrift, unsure of how to live. On the other hand, it gives us the freedom to create our own values. We're no longer bound by the old moral systems. We can define our own meaning and purpose. This is why Nietzsche called the death of God both terrifying and liberating. It's terrifying because it forces us to confront the uncertainty of existence. But it's liberating because it gives us the chance to become who we truly are, to embrace our individuality and our will to power. At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy is the concept of the will to power. But what does this mean? The will to power isn't about physical strength or domination. It's about the drive to grow, create, and overcome. It's the force that pushes us to achieve our potential, to become more than we are. For Nietzsche, the will to power is the essence of life. It's what drives evolution, art, science, and human progress. But traditional morality suppresses the will to power. It tells us to be humble, obedient, and selfless, to deny our desires and conform to societal norms. Nietzsche saw this as life-denying. He believed that true morality should celebrate the will to power, not suppress it. This is why Nietzsche called for a new kind of ethics, one that embraces strength, creativity, and individuality. He believed that we should create values that affirm life, not deny it. Values that help us grow, not shrink. Values that celebrate our humanity, not suppress it. The will to power isn't just a critique of traditional ethics, it's a call to action. It's an invitation to live boldly, authentically, and unapologetically. And this, Nietzsche believed, is the key to a meaningful life. Nietzsche's ideas about master-slave morality might seem abstract, but they're incredibly relevant today. Let's start with master morality. In modern society, master morality can be seen in the values of the elite, those who celebrate strength, ambition, and individuality. Think of successful entrepreneurs, athletes, or artists. They're often admired for their confidence, creativity, and drive. Their values reflect master morality. They don't follow the rules, they make their own. But more than that, Nietzsche's philosophy is a call to action. It challenges us to create our own values, values that affirm life, celebrate individuality, and embrace the will to power. It's an invitation to live boldly, authentically, and unapologetically. And in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, that's a message we all need to hear. Let's take a moment to recap what we've covered. We started by exploring Nietzsche's concept of master-slave morality, the idea that morality isn't universal, but shaped by power dynamics. We looked at master morality, the ethics of the strong, and slave morality, the ethics of the weak. We discussed how resentment fuels slave morality and how Nietzsche critiqued traditional ethics for suppressing individuality and creativity. Finally, we explored how these ideas apply to modern society, from social movements to everyday life. Nietzsche's philosophy challenges us to question the values we take for granted. It asks us to consider, are we living by our own values, or are we simply following the morality of others? Are we embracing strength and creativity, or are we trapped in a system that glorifies weakness and resentment? Here's the truth. Nietzsche's critique of morality isn't just about philosophy, it's about life. It's about how we live, how we think, and how we relate to the world around us. It's a call to break free from the moral systems that hold us back and to create our own values, values that affirm life, celebrate individuality, and embrace the will to power. Nietzsche once said, "Become who you are." This is the essence of his philosophy. It's not about becoming someone else, it's about becoming fully yourself. It's about living boldly, authentically, and unapologetically. And in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, that's a message we all Need to hear. So, what's your next step? Start by reflecting on your own values. Are they truly yours, or have they been shaped by others? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this video resonated with you, share it with someone who might benefit from it. Together, we can create a community of growth, authenticity, and self-discovery. Thank you for watching, and remember, the journey to becoming who you are starts with a single step. Take that step today.